Imagine a nation the world has overlooked for decades suddenly walking into the global arena and rewriting the rules of power. Imagine Burkina Faso, once dismissed as a small Sahel country, merging with a deal so massive, so unexpected, that even the biggest economies pause to take notice. A $40 billion raw rubber partnership that shocks Asia, rattles old powers, and ignites a wave of Pan-African pride across the continent. This is not just about rubber. This is about a nation reclaiming control of its resources, its future, and its global identity. It's about leaders who refuse to bow to pressure, farmers becoming the backbone of a new industrial revolution, and Africa stepping forward with confidence no one can ignore. What happened behind those closed doors? How did Burkina Faso turn a hidden natural resource into one of the most groundbreaking deals in modern African history? And what does this mean for the future of the Sahel and the world? Prepare to witness a transformation, because this isn't just an economic deal. This is the rise of a new African power.
The late-season harmattan winds brushed gently across Ouagadougou as the sun rose behind a hazy veil, painting the sky in muted gold. On the wide boulevard leading to the presidential complex, convoys moved quietly, guards stood taller than usual, and the pulse of the capital beat faster. Something historic was unfolding, though only a handful of Burkinabe citizens understood the magnitude of what the day would bring. Rumors had spread about a major delegation arriving from Asia, whispers of a new turning point, a deal that could redefine the Sahel, and a partnership that would move Burkina Faso into a new economic era. Inside a secure room decorated with cultural motifs and paintings of mossy warriors, President Kabarya sat with his chief strategist, Amadou Yurga. They reviewed the final version of a proposal carrying the staggering figure of $40 billion. For years, analysts said Africa didn't negotiate big. Today, they were wrong. Burkina Faso had always had fertile zones fit for rubber cultivation, but like many African resources, it had remained underdeveloped, undersold, and overlooked. The country often supplied raw materials while others made the wealth. This time would be different. The nation's leadership saw rubber not just as an agricultural product, but as a foundation for industrialization. As aircraft wheels touched the tarmac, delegates from Indonesia, Malaysia, India, South Korea, and the UAE stepped into the Sahelian heat. For months, they had negotiated quietly with Burkina Faso, drawn by the country's raw rubber reserves and its growing political confidence. Asia was recalibrating its resource network, and Burkina Faso was positioning itself as a strategic partner, not a dependent supplier. When delegations gathered in the ceremonial negotiation hall, every detail, African artwork, Pan-African banners, and local rosewood decor, sent a message: Africa negotiates with dignity. The Indonesian trade minister spoke first, praising Burkina Faso's vision. Amadou responded firmly. Africa was not a playground for external powers, but a global partner capable of shaping its own destiny. Hours of intense negotiation followed. Every clause was read aloud, debated, restructured. The Emirati observer requested political stability guarantees, and Amadou responded with bold conviction. Our guarantee is our sovereignty. It was the turning point. Outside the hall, the Sahel sky darkened as the winds shifted. Inside, something far greater shifted: the balance of power. The delegations returned to the table and finalized a groundbreaking agreement that stretched far beyond rubber exports. It included rubber processing hubs, research institutes, rural development funding, technology transfers, and a training center for young Burkinabe engineers. When the final signatures were placed, a quiet shock spread through the room. Burkina Faso had secured one of the most powerful economic agreements in the continent's history. Cameras clicked, reporters rushed, analysts scrambled, and across Africa, a wave of Pan-African pride surged. Burkina Faso, long underestimated, had redefined the rules. In the days that followed, Burkina Faso transformed from quiet capital to global headline. Villages erupted in celebration. Farmers who once sold latex for nearly nothing now saw themselves as key partners in a national rebirth. The $40 billion deal symbolized more than wealth. It symbolized respect, sovereignty, and a new direction for generations. As foreign engineers and African researchers worked side by side, new roads unfolded across previously neglected regions. thousands of young Burkinabe registered for industrial training programs. Cooperatives were formed, guaranteeing stable prices for rural harvesters. The first rubber processing megaplant in Bobo Dioulasso began construction, promising jobs and opportunities that had never existed in the Sahel. African leaders praised the deal. Economists across the global south studied it. Even Western corporations took notice, suddenly offering better terms to African nations they had long undervalued. A shift had begun, not in speeches, not in theory, but in actual policy. Months later, when the first processing plant opened, the scene was electric. Machinery hummed, workers cheered, and flags from Burkina Faso and its new Asian partners fluttered above the complex. The president addressed the crowd, declaring the plant a symbol of Africa's new economic confidence. The applause thundered across the industrial grounds. The ripple effects continued through the continent. Regional trade routes improved. The Sahel saw a new sense of purpose. Migration rates dropped as young people found hope at home. Diplomats whispered about how Burkina Faso's boldness was reshaping alliances. Of course, challenges came: logistical hurdles, competitive sabotage attempts, and political criticism. But the foundation was too strong. The nation had shifted into a new gear, driven by unity and belief in its own capacity. Years later, scholars would call this moment the rubber rebirth, comparing its impact to major turning points in African economic history. But in Burkina Faso, the meaning was simpler. It was the moment when a forgotten resource became the engine of a new identity. As dusk fell over the shiny new industrial corridor, Amadou Yurga stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Trucks moved steadily along the highway, transporting the first batches of refined rubber to international markets. The hum of progress vibrated across the landscape. He whispered to himself, "Burkina Faso has risen." And under the warm Sahel sunset, a new chapter of African strength, unity, and global influence began its journey.